Hello everyone, you're welcome to today's class. Today we're going to talk about government. Government is a phenomenon I'm sure we are all familiar with. In short, even those in the sciences, commercial or art department, or even those who do not have the privilege of having formal education would have heard of the word government. And it's important to note that politics is a broad term. It's a more broad term that is used to discourse everything that has to do with government. Politics is the allocation of resources to further the interest of a particular entity. So politics is always interest driven. All right, are we together? So narrowing it down to the reason why we are having this tutorial, Waec, aside your objectives, your theory will be divided into two sections, the section A and section B. 5 questions will be given to you in section A, as well as 5 questions in section B, of which you are expected to answer 2 questions each. Now, according to Waec, we have 10 topics that have been listed, out of which your questions will come from in section A, and about 9 topics in section B that your topics will come from. So the advice is for you to try as much as possible to treat or to touch all the topics so that you don't prepare one-sidedly. So in section A, we're going to look at meaning and scope of government, definition of government according to the 3 parameters as an institution of the state, as the art or process of governing, and as an academic field of study. We're going to look at the basic concept and principles of government, concepts such as society, nation, power, authority, legitimacy, sovereignty, democracy, socialization, amongst others. Principles such as rule of law, fundamental human rights, separation of powers, checks and balances, constitutionalism, political participation, amongst others. There are other topics such as constitution, state structures, organs of government, citizenship, political parties, pressure groups, public opinion, mass media, electoral systems, and public civil service administration. So that's all we have in section A. Section B will have topics such as pre-colonial era, colonial era, nationalism, constitutional development, development of political parties, foreign policies, international organizations, and military power. So in section A, we have about 10 topics. Section B, we have 9 topics, making about 19 topics in all. The advice will be for you to cover as much as possible, about 7 at least, from both sections. So we are going to start right away by looking at the first 2 topics in section A, which is the meaning and scope of government, as well as some basic concepts of government. So, what is government? Like I said earlier on, government can be defined according to 3 parameters: as an institution of the state, as an art of governing, and as an academic field of study. So, going to the first one, government as an institution of the state is defined as the machinery set up by the state to administer its functions and duties. This consists of bodies such as the legislature, executive, and judiciary. For every typical government you find anywhere around the world, you will always find an executive arm, a judicial institution, as well as a legislative institution. Are you following me? So let me narrow this down. For instance, in a secondary school system, in order to carry out its functions and duties and maintain law and order, a group of individuals are empowered to exercise authority on behalf of the school, such as the principal, the vice principal, the teachers, the prefect, class monitors, who exercise authority on behalf of the school. They will make sure that the school achieves its aims, its goals and objectives, and make sure there is compliance with laws and order. So these individuals will be the determining factor to determine whether the school will operate well or not. The same way, for you to be able to categorize a government or examine a government or analyze a government, you must first look at it from the functions of its institutions, the executive, the legislative arm, as well as the judicial arm. Are we together? So there has been an eternal debate. Some people say, what is the need of our nation? Do we need strong men or do we need strong institutions? I would say we need both, because Strong men will service strong institutions, but strong men will die. Hence, strong men need to build strong institutions, because institutions can bring about sustainable growth and development that will outlive each and every one of us. So, in going to the next one, as a process or art of governing, government is referred to as an art of governing because it is a body vested with the supreme power of the state to man the affairs. Government is vested with the power of maintaining peace and security by putting in place machineries for that purpose. The government is always claimed to have the monopoly of the use of force. That's what characterizes a government. That's what makes government different from associations, because governments have the monopoly of the legitimate use of force in making sure that it carried out its responsibilities and duties. So, for instance, if the government want to make sure that there's enforcement, there's compliance with law and order, what will it do? It will put about policies in place. That's a process. It will bring about human resources. That's employing people, training them to make sure that they can help effect those policies. Now, these are what you call processes or an art of governing. It's a means to an end. Are you following me? So that's what we mean by when we say government is a process or an art of governing. Then thirdly, as an academic field of study, of course, that's another parameter which we can as well define governments, whereby you go to an institution to really study governmental theories, governmental analysis. You study different subfields about government with a view to having a better understanding and how to really govern and make sure that governments perform well. So you study generally political science in the university, and it has several subfields such as international relations, local government administration, comparative politics. You have some will have public administration and so many other subfields. So this is another parameter with which we can define government. So don't forget, this question most times always comes out in your exam. The idea is for you to have the idea of what all these things is all about. Government as an institution, we're talking about structure. Government as an art or process of governing, talking about the means by which the government uses to make sure it carries out its functions. And lastly, we talk about as an academic field of study, where you study political institutions, political theories with so many subfields. So we move on. When we talk about government is put in place to perform certain functions and functionalities. I'll rather look at it from the aspect of two functions. In your textbooks, they will list about 10 or 11 or 15 or 20 functions generally, but I'll categorize and summarize all these functionalities into two. The first will be socio-political functions of government, and the second will be the economic functions of the government. Are we together? I hope you're following me. So, the socio-political functions of government, the first will be to protect the sovereignty of the state. Sovereignty is the major factor that determines whether an entity is a state. Sovereignty is the ability to go about your activities without interference or influence from an external party, being in total control of an entity. So the government exists to protect the sovereignty of the state, to safeguard its territory, like I've earlier mentioned, and its integrity from outsiders especially. Another socio-political function will be the protection of individual and properties. Just as we every time we set out to go out, we say we're Nigerians. That means there's a responsibility resting on the government to protect us. In times of danger, the government has to protect us. For instance, with the birth of COVID-19, which has endangered our lives, you see the government has always been trying to make sure that there is little spread or people stay safe as much as possible. That's the duty of the government. So, another function will be to the guarantee of certain basic human rights. the right to live, the right to have association, the right to freedom, the right to do so many things. We are not in a caged society, unlike the old times where government was more of not as free as what we used to have. Democracy is more of a modern concept than in the olden days. So the government exists to provide and safeguard our basic human rights and to protect us: right to life, right to dignity of human persons, right to personal liberty, right to fair hearing, right to private and family life, right to freedom of thought, conscience and religion, right to freedom of movement, right to peaceful assembly and association, amongst others. Okay, so the government also exists to promote the general welfare of the people, irrespective of the culture, irrespective of the tribalism or the background of such people, in as much as they belong to the territorial entity of that government. The government has the duty to promote the welfare of the people. So going over quickly to the economic functions of government, the government exists to provide an economic function and make sure that it allocates resources to meet the needs of individuals and groups within the societies. So it also exists to guard against unfair business practices. For instance, when there is manipulation or where businesses or businesses are trying to put out harsh policies that will affect the general citizenry, the government can readily wade in to make sure that something is done in that regard by regulating trade, commerce, and putting up structures in place to make sure that everything is in check. So that's one of the economic functions of the government. The government also exists to promote the maximum production of public goods and services in order to minimize unemployment and ensure reasonable and stable level of prices. It's all tied to what I have said earlier on. The government's duty is to create employment. That's why you hear it every time each contestant is coming on board to contest. They'll tell you, we are going to provide 1 million jobs every year. We're going to provide 50 million jobs every quarter. It's the duty of the government to provide employment, if not employment, opportunities for employment. Okay. All right. So the government protects the individuals from economic disaster through minimum wage legislation, insurance programs, and public education, housing schemes, and health insurance, amongst others. The government is also involved in providing public utilities such as electricity, rails, road, telephone services, amongst others. The government exists and has the power to collect tax, to borrow money, and use all these to the betterment of the life of its subjects. So those are the socio-political and economic functions of the government. There are a lot of others. You can read them up in your textbooks. So we go straight to the second topic: basic concepts and principles of government. Today we're only going to talk about concepts. We're not going to talk about principles. Concepts such as power, authority, legitimacy, and sovereignty. These are the ones we're going to talk about today. You may read up the other concept in your textbook. So, power. I'm sure that's a word you hear every day. Power refers to the ability to have one's will carried out despite the resistance of others. Most of us have seen a striking example of raw power. For instance, when we are driving a car and we see a police car in our rear view mirror, or we're in a car, at that particular moment, the driver of that car has enormous power over us. We make sure we strictly obey the speed limit and other driving rules, because if the police catches us flaunting those rules, we're going to be stopped, as otherwise we may be in for a bigger trouble. And when the officer approaches our car, we ordinarily try to be as polite as possible and pray we do not get fined or arrested, of course. So that's a form of power. The power is the ability to have one's will carried out despite resistance of others, despite the fact that you may want to overspeed, despite the fact that you may not want to use your seatbelt. But by the time you sight a police officer, you have to correct yourself. That's the influence of power. Are we together? Okay, so power, some other scholars have said power is the ability to influence and direct the behavior of others and guide the course and outcome of events. So when you talk about political power, it is the ability to influence, direct our behaviors in such a way that the desired goals and objective of the state is achievable. And need I remind you, the government alone has the legitimate monopoly of the use of power or force. That's what makes a government legitimate. It controls the military and other paramilitary organizations. So that's that about power. Of course, we have different types of power. I'm not here to give you all the detailed explanation. I'm here just to guide you. We have coercive power, we have legitimate power, we have reward power, and some other forms of power. When you talk about coercive power is just the use of force to enforce the will of the state. That's why you have the military and paramilitary organizations. You have the navy, you have the army, you have the Air Force. These ones make sure that they carry out the will of the state using force, if possible, defending the territory both in the air, on land, and at the sea, and making sure that there is law and order. It's only the state, only the government that has the monopoly of the use of these ones. No association can do that. Once any association can acquire the legitimate monopoly of the use of coercive power, then it becomes a recognized government. That's why for you to have, in those days where we used to have military intervention in Nigeria, what is the first thing they do? The first thing to do will be to eliminate the commander-in-chief of the coercive power, which is the military head of state. Once they eliminate the military head of state and its other associates, then anyone who is able to muster enough power to come on board and control the coercive power becomes the government, legitimate government of the day. Are you following me? Okay. So legitimate power, like I said, it's a power derived from the constitution's law. And how do you do that? In modern democracy that we practice, you do that by contesting by the electoral processes. That's how you acquire legitimate power. Okay, so reward power is when it's not really one of the major type of power. It's giving somebody an incentive for either obeying instructions or carrying out activities as assigned to him. So you confer them with delegated power. Okay. Authority. We go over to authority. Authority means that an individual or group has the right to use power by making decisions, giving orders, and demanding obedience. So authority means the right to power. An individual has been given the right to use power. That's what authority means. So power is out there, authority is below power, because when you have the authority to do something, for instance, a police officer who, when you see, for instance, if you see a man on the road telling you to pull over while you're driving and tells you to park, you may not obey such person. But when you see a uniformed police officer flagging you down, telling you to pull over, you know that you just have to, because he's acting under an authority of the government via that uniform. So that's an authority. That's a recognized authority. He has the right to exercise power as delegated to him by the government. Are you following me? Okay, so that's what authority is all about. Then we go to the types of authority. We have traditional authority, we have legal rational authority, and we have charismatic authority. Now, traditional authority has been like the oldest form of authority, like from time immemorial. It's associated with authority tied to a deity, tied to religious leaders or traditional leaders. Are we together? So, and this has practically been the oldest form of authority. That's why even in these times that we are in, the government recognizes traditional leaders. They recognize religious leaders. Whenever there is a big issue or national issue to be discussed, different governments of the day will bring on board traditional leaders, and they will bring on board religious leaders. Even currently in the United States, Donald Trump has recognized the need to allow people to go back to church, irrespective of the teeming level of increased spread in the United States, because there is a need for people to in tune with their traditional authority, because that is one of the pillars that hold the society together. So traditional authority has been in existence even way before the other forms of authority. and it's still very relevant in our modern times because these ones have followers. Religious leaders have followers. Even traditional leaders have followers that they lead. So the government of the day always pay attention to them, and that's where. So when you see religious leaders or you see traditional leaders, they have powers. They're exercising powers as delegated to them by the state. So that's why when you see a traditional leader, you respect them. When you see, yes, you have council of traditional leaders recognized by state governments. State governments, you even have a ministry of traditional leaders and all that. The same thing with religious leaders. They are recognized by the state. So don't just go against them when you see them. They are exercising authority on behalf of power on behalf of the government. Legitimate authority, of course, this is legal rational authority, rather. This is when an individual acquires the right to exercise some functions legitimately, either by elections or contesting for other electoral offices. So that's what you call legal rational, and oftentimes it's always seasonal. It's in those days that we have president for life, personalized rules and leadership. You have the Umabongo, Mobutu Sese Seko, Paul Biya. We have the Robert Mugabe, all these ones who declared themselves president for life. But of course, it's always having a fixed tenure. So legal rational authority is always having a fixed tenure. Charismatic form of leadership is a situation, authority rather, is a situation whereby an individual who possesses a lot of leadership qualities commands the respect or the obedience of others. Most times it's always naturally. It's not legal, and it's not really a direct delegation of power from the state. For instance, Mahatma Gandhi. For instance, Nelson Mandela. For instance, Martin Luther King. All these guys did not get legitimate powers from the state to do the things they did. But because they possessed lots of leadership qualities, they were able to get people to listen to them and to obey them, creating revolutions in their countries respectively. So charismatic leadership is most times unstable because the same way with legal rational authority, it is not enduring. It doesn't last for life. Ghana is late. India is still experiencing a lot of problems. Mandela is late. South Africa is still having a lot of corruption cases. Luther King is late. America still has a lot of issues on racism, even till date. So the most reliable form of authority will still be traditional authority, being the oldest, and perhaps legal rational. But charismatic is the most unstable because once such person goes, he may not be able to get someone who will replace him, and that's the end. Legal rational is still better because there's a platform to bring in someone legitimately to exercise such authority. So the most unstable will be charismatic authority. Okay, so let's briefly talk about the other concepts. Legitimacy. Legitimacy refers to the citizens' belief that their leaders have the right to exercise power over them. It is possible for a government to be in place and not be legitimate. And it is possible for it not to be legitimate because from this definition we have had, it's mainly about the acceptance of the people. So most times, a lot of the military regimes, the dictators who has led different countries over time, a lot of them did not have the legitimate permission or acceptance of the people. But of course, since they were able to get through to the monopoly of power, which is the use of force, they came on board and the citizens really didn't have anything to do about it. So, but it didn't make them legitimate leaders or make their government legitimate. But when you talk about true legitimacy, it deals with democratic governments. Modern democratic governments are always legitimate government because for you to come on board as a government official, you must be subjected to an election. And it is not robots or machines or ghosts or dead bodies that will vote, but these are humans who are saying, who are confirming the rights, your acceptance by going to a thumbprint or vote for you. So by doing that, they are telling you or saying that, oh, this is the person we are giving the mandate to serve and lead us, making such government legitimate. So that's what the legitimacy is all about. Okay, sovereignty. Like I earlier said, sovereignty is the highest exercise of political power. It is supreme and the ultimate authority that cannot be overruled by a higher power. Sovereignty is the highest political power. Undue interference, when the state has the right to see to its matters without any interference from external bodies. And a lot of third world countries suffer a lot from this category of phenomenon, because the superpower countries always try to interfere in one way or the other. For instance, in Libya, when Gaddafi was bringing out some policies that were anti-Europe, the United States of America stepped in and killed him, tagging him as a terrorist. So all these affect, by the time a country is being influenced or its activity is being interfered with, the credibility of such country or state will be put in question. So that is the most important feature of any state. There are features of states. Of course, a state is an entity that is marked out by some elements such as defined territory, defined population, government, and some other elements. A state is higher than the government. Government is an element of the state. Do you understand? It's a feature of the state. So one of the things that makes a state is an entity. You understand? It's a jurisdiction over an entity. And one of the key functions of a state or element of a state is sovereignty, which is a legal territorial boundary. Then you have government, you have other elements. So this will be the end of our class today. So remember, we have talked about the meaning and the scope of government as an institution of the state, where we talked about the definition as a process and art of governing. We talked about it as well as an academic field of study. We looked at basic concepts such as power, authority, legitimacy, sovereignty, and state briefly. So in the next class, we are going to talk about the principles of government, such as rule of law, fundamental human rights, separation of powers, and constitutionalism, checks and balances, amongst others. So I hope you had a wonderful time. Then you're going to have your class exercise now. The first question will be, define government vividly as an institution of the state. That's the first question. 2, can a government be legitimate? And 3, the third question is, why is it popularly believed that charismatic authority is unstable? So you send your answers to my DM on the group page. So thank you so much.